It's an incredible day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast has just revealed the most powerful Planeswalker they've ever made. And it just so happens to be Urza. And on top of that, they've also announced something called Starter Commander Decks.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends! I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for a fantastic edition of Mega Magic News. This one focuses heavily around the Brothers' War, and that's actually based, if you didn't know, on an old book from Magic the Gathering, all the way back from the 90s. This is the best story in Magic's history, and I'm actually covering it over on my other channel. So if you like Magic lore and you want to know about this goodness, a new video just came out today. I'll leave it all linked at the end of the video. But before we get really deep into the Brothers' War, because we're going to go crazy on this, let's talk really quick about the idea of starter commander decks, because they feel strange to me. We have seen what has been known as the Commander Renaissance. Wizards of the Coast went from kind of looking at Commander as a side thing to make one product for a year. You guys may not remember this, but all the way back about 10 years ago, all Wizards did was make a set of Commander decks once a year. And Commander players would come lumbering out of the woods, "Woo, it's our time," and they'd snag up the decks and they'd disappear back into the wilds again until next year when the decks would show up, right? But they would also howl into the winds, "Give us more product, Wizards! Acknowledge us!" And then Wizards came into the woods and said, "I hear you're out here, Commander players. Come on, we got your catnip." And they started to make more and more Commander products. They started to make all the different singles showing up in different products, like way more Commander based. So you go, okay, what's your plan here? Is everything Commander? And yes, Commander players, you got your wish. Everything is now Commander. The Planeswalker decks that used to be released with every set have been switched over to Commander decks. Now, I thought those were supposed to be the beginner Commander decks because they release other Commander decks and you got the Warhammer Commander deck. So I thought that the couple of pre-release Commander deck style decks they put out each set were the here you go beginner people, but they've decided to additionally make starter Commander decks that are more generic and not tied into a particular set, so they're always available as starters. I have no idea how well this product's going to do, but I'll throw up on the screen for you the 5 little face cards for the 5 different decks. And I did wonder why Amara Tandris got upgraded to Mythic for this, and I feel like ultimately it's simply because the other 4 are Mythic, and they're like, well, every deck's got to have a Mythic. So I don't know exactly what's going to be in these decks, but I expect them to be weaker on the scale. Now, Wizards is in full announcement mode. We've got a bunch more announcements coming down Tuesday. There's other stuff about Hasbro Pulse happening tomorrow. Basically, we have been no breathing room crammed back to back to back. We had the Commander spoilers, Infinity spoilers, and by Commander I mean 40k, right? So you had that, you had Infinity, now we're rolling right into Brothers' War, and they have loaded a ton of stuff down on us. We are getting a bunch of awesome characters. Now, they haven't spoiled the cards, but we're getting Gix, we're getting Hercule, we're getting Ashnod, and they did spoil some amazing cards that we are going to talk about. In fact, there's so much to talk about that I can't talk about it all in this video. I'm going to be doing a live stream tonight on my other YouTube channel, Hatcher, where I go through all of the other spoilers other than the Urza Planeswalker card and the 2 cards that combine to make him. Because this is amazing. If you don't understand the story behind this, you're not going to see how crazy this is. But if you're somebody who already knows the Brothers' War, buckle up. You're going to see something amazing. First things first, let's take a look at Urza. So Urza, Lord Protector. This is Urza at the height of his earthly power, right? When he is still, Dominarian power. He's not from Earth. But you know what I'm saying. This is when he's still a mortal man. This is right before the insanity that turns him into a planeswalker. And also, spoilers for the Brothers War story for anybody who might be watching the lore on the other channel. There is going to be a story spoiler if you don't already know. But the story is 30 years old, so there is that. Anyhow, so you've got Urza here. Let me slow down. I'm getting super excited and running at a mile a minute. So, we have Urza. 1 blue, 1 white, and 1 for a 2/4 human artificer. Artifact, instant, and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So, on the surface, he's just a 3 mana 2/4 who says, hey, you know what? I'll make your artifacts, instants, and sorceries cost 1 less. That's not too shabby. But then he has the second ability that says 7 mana. If you both own and control Urza Lord Protector and an artifact named the Might Stone and the Weak Stone, exile them, then meld them into Urza Planeswalker, activate only as a sorcery. So this 7 mana is essentially going to represent when Urza fed all of that mana into the Sylex and became a planeswalker. I won't say anything more specifically about that, so we can save it for the story over on Fantasy Geographic. But let's take a look at the Might Stone and the Weak Stone. This is an ancient Thran, ancient Phyrexian gemstone, depending on how you want to look at it, that has been sundered in twain and is now 2 power stones. So the Might Stone and the Weak Stone costs 5 mana to put out. It's a legendary artifact, Power Stone. Now, this is a fun little tie-in with cards we've seen in the previous set, Dominaria United, that make your Power Stone tokens, right? Because Power Stones feature heavily into the story of the brothers, where these Power Stones are how the brothers actually made their magical automatons work, because at the beginning of the story, both Mishra and Urza have no ability to wield magic. They're only drawing magic from these Power Stones that have them inside. Magic doesn't actually become something they can wield until further down the road, except through Power Stones. And the Might Stone and the Weak Stone are the 2 most powerful stones on Dominaria. Hands down. There's absolutely no contest. And if you want to know how they get split into the 2 stones, that is actually covered in the story. We've done that part already. Now, in terms of the card, basically, when it enters the battlefield, you get to choose 1. Draw 2 cards, or target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. And this represents the empowerment and weakening abilities of the Might Stone and the Weak Stone, respectively. So you can use the Weak Stone to blast one of your enemies, or you can use the other side of it for empowerment. That is amazing. And they can have the power drawn out of them as well. Mana. You can tap them to add 2 colorless mana, but the mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells. I love the way this works because, like I said, at this point, the brothers don't actually have the ability to cast spells. Urza doesn't know how to actually wield magic. They are children compared to genuine magicians, people who can use true magical powers to make the Statue of Liberty disappear. Do you know what I mean? So, how does this work? It melds with Urza. What happens when you pay 7 mana? Well, that's when Urza activates the Sylex and ascends to Planeswalker status. And that's when you get Urza Planeswalker. Take a look at the artwork. The gemstones from the previous art are in his eyes. They meld into his head. If you didn't know that, Urza has gemstone eyes. The Power Stones are a part of him. It's one of his most unique attributes, and it comes up in a number of ways in the story where it's both a great strength of his, but also a weakness of his. And there's so many extra layers to it. I can't even tell you it all without spoiling it. But man, okay, slow down. This is incredible. And the power level of this card, like, you have to understand, Urza is from the pre-mending era. The planeswalkers we have now are weak. You can see it in the Dominaria United story. Like, you see how they can only do so much against these Phyrexians. Old school planeswalkers were way more powerful. And this is Planeswalker Urza going hardcore. You can activate his loyalty abilities twice every turn. He comes into play with 7 loyalty. And if you're wondering how you get this, these 2 halves are printed on the backs of the cards that I just showed you. You flip them over and they turn into a giant Urza. So this thing is like twice or 3 times the size of a regular Magic card, depending on how you look at it. So it takes up a big presence on the table. It has 7 loyalty. You activate the abilities twice. He has 5 abilities plus 2. Artifacts, instant, and sorcery spells you cast cost 2 less to cast, and you gain 2 life. Plus 1, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. 0, create 2/1/1 soldier artifact creature tokens. -3, exile target non-land permanent. And -10, artifacts and planeswalkers you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Destroy all non-land permanents. This is insane. That ultimate represents the Silex Blast that just levels everything, right? Like the Silex features heavily into this story of the upcoming Brothers War set, where basically they're going back in time to try and figure out how to make the Silex work because they had to bring another one back after the previous one got destroyed. It's so epic to see Urza in this incredibly powerful form. Just look at him. There are no planeswalkers as strong as him. These abilities are incredible. Double activations, it really just does feel like overwhelming, unstoppable power, and I'm 100% here for it. This is my favorite era in Magic, and honestly, I feel so rewarded for spending the time working on the Brothers War lore. If you guys don't even get this, I have hours and hours of the Brothers War story already recorded with great visuals over on Fantasy Geographic. It's fantastic. And if you check all of that out, you're going to know what's going on in the upcoming Brothers War set, where they're going to do a past and present variation, where they're going back to the past to save the present, right? So that is mega sick to me. And like I said, these are the only spoilers specifically that we're going to cover from the main spoilers, but I do want to talk about some variant spoilers. So up on the screen, you are going to see Ivory Tower. Now, while you're looking at this card, I want you to realize something. At one point in Magic's history, this card was incredibly powerful. If you were playing a control deck, like I remember being so happy when I had this in my starting hand. You were only allowed to play 1 copy of this in your deck. Magic is a lot faster now. So you may be thinking to yourself, well, come on, dude. You put this out on the first turn and what? Next turn you gain like 2 life, whoop-de-doo, and you got to keep your hand full of cards, and this seems very weak by today's standards. And by today's standards, yeah, it is. But the game was slow, so you could sit there and the Ivory Tower would give you an insurmountable advantage, especially against burn decks. If you had a hand of 7 cards, every turn that went by, you were basically gaining enough life. It was equivalent to them hitting you with a lightning bolt. Like a starting Ivory Tower first turn was incredible. And now you look at it and go, ugh, it's jank. But what's not jank is the artwork. This looks really cool with the crazy towers, I should say, that are actually made out of ivory tusks as well. That's a cool vibe, and you'll notice they are doing retro frames with this. On top of that, they're actually going to do retro frames with the commander decks that come along with Brothers War as well. So the entirety of both of those commander decks will be retro framed. And there are some funky cards that are being included that way. They're also doing Artificer schematic versions, which are incredibly similar to the special promo cards that we've been seeing coming out of the secret layers. Panharmonicon, Pilgrim's Eye, stuff like that, right? So we've got this schematic variant as well. Now, the schematic variants and these retro artifacts are actually spread across all the different types of boosters, right? So it doesn't matter where you're going, set, draft, anything like that. So now you got to be wondering, what's the catch for the collector boosters? They had the Legends cards for Dominaria United. What's the hook to pull us in for the fat, juicy collector action? Well, that is actually serialized cards. This is something they already tested in Secret Lair. You may or may not remember the Viscera Seers that were numbered 1 to 100. Well, they are going to be doing things like, for example, on the screen right now, you're going to see the Worm Coil engine, and actually you'll notice that it says down in the corner, out of 500. So they're going to be creating super ultra deluxe chase rares that are numbered, and I don't know if the numbers are going to range all in 500 or if we're going to have some out of 1,000, some out of 100. Are we going to do out of 10? Are we going to do 1 out of 1 variants? Like, I don't know that much about the world of baseball cards, but I understand that's the insane road they go down. So I don't know if we're going to get to the point where, like, somebody's going to be bragging about how they got a part of Mark Rosewater's shirt stapled to a card, and it's just, I don't know. It's next level, right? So the serialized stuff, it does add, what am I trying to say? One of the things that collector boosters suffered from is when you buy the stuff with all the premium stuff, it has a diminishing returns where all these foil versions become less special. And there's so many out there that the people who just want them because they're harder to get, they don't care that they shine, they care that they're harder to get and that the peasants can't get them. Well, these expensive variants will be for the people who wish to sneer down at us peasants who have to use the regular versions, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, I've got to go and get ready because we're going to be doing that spoiler stream and I got to get all the cards prepared for that. So if you want to join in, you can check that out over on my Hatcher channel. I'll leave a link on the live stream, or I should say on the screen for that live stream. And also, if you want to check out the storyline itself and know what's going on with the Brothers War, then I will leave a link to the entire playlist of hours of amazing story. You're welcome. So, thanks for coming by, my friends. Big shout out to all of my patrons for supporting my channel. You guys are the best. And I will see all of you either at the live stream or over on Fantasy Geographic with some awesome Magic lore.